Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are first seeing this on YouTube, you'll see a little link down below that you can click and become part of the conversation in Zoom. If you're in Zoom and you're an attendee and you're wondering how are there some people that are attendees and some people are panelists? Well, the panelists got here early. We open at 6 o'clock. 6 a.m. You don't have to be here at 6, but we open at 6 a.m. and we just start chatting. I can't promise anything between 6 and 6:30. This is what we kind of think of as the original hour of how we all just started showing up here and chit-chatting. But 6 to 6:30 is that conversation. At 6:30 to 6:40, we distribute the Discord link, which may have not got distributed today. I copied the Discord link, and I think somehow I didn't distribute it, so we'll post it here. Phil, if you can make a new one, we'll give everybody a late Discord link.
Should I go ahead and post it in Mukana, or
yeah, go ahead and put it in Mukana. So also, if you are in the chat in Zoom, you'll see a link to the chat in Mukana, which is where we actually do the chat. So you can ask questions. By the way, as I'm talking is a perfect time for you to start asking questions. We depend on our viewers. This is not a show that is driven by the hosts or the panelists. It's driven by the viewers. So if you are an attendee and you've got a question, you want to, our request for you is to jump into the questions and ask them. And we've got quite a few stacking up, so it looks like it's going to be a busy Monday morning. From 7 to 8, we'll answer those questions, all the general questions that you may have. Now, if you have any questions specifically around Zoom, we are talking about Zoom in the second hour. The second hour is where we have a more focused discussion about something that we think is interesting. And so Zoom is going to be that. Please put Zoom : and then not Zoom Colin, who is a panelist, but Zoom : and your question. That way we know to keep it for the second hour. So Zoom is going to be the second hour today. A general discussion about audio is going to be tomorrow. So if you save your audio questions, if you're just trying to figure something out, save those for tomorrow. Wednesday, we're going to talk about remote focus systems. So how does that actually work with Chris Summers? Chris will be back. He was not able to join us last week, but he will be back this week. So he'll be talking about remote camera systems. We have a special guest. On Thursdays, we do special guests. The special guest this Thursday will be Brian Vander Ark, and he is the lead singer of the Verve Pipe. I think some of you may have remembered some singles called Freshman and Photograph and a couple other great songs. He's going to join us and talk about the journey of being a rock star, as well as he's threatening to play a couple songs for us. So anyway, I think that could be a fun Thursday to join us. Friday and Saturday are dedicated to education. So 8 to 9 on Friday and 9 to 11 on Saturday, or so. 11 is what we call a ragged close. So I think we went to about 11:30 this last Saturday. So we talk about that, and then Sunday is just kind of a more informal hour. So that's what we have lined up. Chris, looks like we got a couple questions.
We do indeed. Good morning, Alex. The first question comes from Ray Franklin, presumably in Princeton. What are the more useful Stream Deck actions for the ATEM Mini Pro? Do you use the Stream Deck with your ATEM stuff?
I don't use this. Oh yeah, so I do. I use the ATEM. I use the Stream Deck mostly to cut, so I've assigned it to a couple different camera angles. So if I don't have it's a nice control surface other than the software. So the reason I use it instead of the ATEM software is so that I don't have to be looking at the ATEM software while I'm trying to do a show. So if I'm doing a show and I want to be able to cut between some angles without that. Now the ATEM Mini has had me use that more often. When I'm using it, I don't use it as much with my ATEM Mini. I use the Stream Deck more with my Constellation or a 2ME, which is a larger switcher. The Mini gives you a lot of the buttons that I need, but you can have downstream keys and a variety of other things. But I admit I don't use it as much with the ATEM Mini as I used to. Used to use it with the larger switchers. George and then Jason.
So for the ATEM Mini Pro, I have it tied to my television studio. So most of the times I'm using the Mini Pro for graphics. So I'm able to switch. I have both of them tied together. So I'm able to hit one button and do transitions. So in that sense, you could use it to tie it up to a larger switcher.
That's great. Jason?
I mean, really, it's going to depend upon your use case. But one of my favorite things to do is if you're using DVE for picture-in-picture, to switch what's in DVE. So DVE key and DVE fill. is probably my easiest one button thing on the Stream Deck.
And are you connecting that to a macro?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know of a way to do it without a macro.
Well, I mean, I think that's the thing, that you can tie these to macros, and then that makes it, you can do a lot of interesting things with the switchers when you start tying the keys to macros within the switcher. Go ahead, Chris.
Is there a definitive or a really good tutorial on how to program? I know it can be done, but to how to program the Stream Deck to do something to an app, even when that app isn't the forward live app, if you will.
Well, for the ATEM,
I would say
Here to Record. Yeah, Here to Record has a really good tutorial, at least for ATEM, like, making macros and then doing them on the Stream Deck. If you use Companion with Stream Deck instead of the interface, it gets much better.
Companion is the app.
Yeah, Companion.
Companion is a whole world. It would be hard to say that it's an app as much as a Companion ties all of your hardware together, and then
everything I hear
gives
about
you
it
an
makes
interface.
me want to never look at it because I don't want to lose that much of my life.
It's an amazing piece of software. Victor, and then Jeffrey, real quick.
Chris, I would recommend Keyboard Maestro if I understood your question correctly, as it didn't seem to be tied specifically to the ATEM. Keyboard Maestro will let you do anything with any app, anytime, anywhere. It's a wonderful piece of software.
Great. Jeffrey?
So I not only have my switcher all tied up to it, but I also have another computer, which I have my lower thirds through new BlueFX using a side app called Viscero, and it works really well. And then I have my PTZ camera set up through the Visca setup, and both of those will control different things. So you have a bunch of options. Another thing is that you got to get these apps to really kind of adapt the Stream Deck to do it, because there is an option to completely bypass the hotkey option. Wirecast is doing this, so I don't need to put in a single hotkey into Wirecast, and it just knows the button, knows the position, and it works a lot better than it does with a hotkey situation.
All right, next question.
It dawned on me, we should put little icons in the corner of our screen that say whether or not the person speaking is a Mac user or a PC user predominantly.
Let's keep going. Yeah, next question.
Okay, Esborn Larson says, what are your preferred table arm mounts for vlog camera and monitors? For vlog camera and monitors, vlog. I have a 30-inch Dell and a 60-inch MacBook Pro and a Canon EOS R at my desk.
Bill?
Generally, the OC White company is known in the broadcast space as being the desktop arm mount kind of top end. You can get them that are not only very solid, but very beautiful. Below that, you've got thousands of companies making the small arms that are less expensive.
Yeah, my favorite large arm solution is the monitors in motion. It's not the least expensive solution, but man, those arms nice. They're just, no matter how big the monitor is, if you buy one that designed it, it's just like it's floating. You just kind of move it around to where you need it. And we've used those a lot. Go ahead, Beju.
Thanks. Two things. You need to make Mike host first, because he's not able to switch right now.
Okay.
Second, Ergotron and BTech make really good mounts for monitors and for all different sizes, and also stand-up desks as well.
And you can always, whoever's lined up as editor, you can always interrupt me if I haven't handed you the host, because that's important. Go ahead, Chris.
We've talked about this before. There's a guy on YouTube, I think his DSLR shooter, Caleb Pike. He has a whole tutorial about how to use Visa mounts to hold a camera, a light, a mic. He doesn't actually oddly enough, he doesn't actually put a monitor on the Visa mount, but it's a click for click shopping list and shows everything that you have to modify, where you drill a hole. It's a really well done tutorial. One
of the things that is useful too for those of you just building up more stage-like sets, Film Tools has a Visa mount to a baby pin and it's super useful. We have bought many of those. So it's a Visa mount, and then it screws in with a baby pin that you can put into a C stand. You can put into a C stand arm. You can, and it's and we use that. And then you can unscrew it. So when you're traveling, you can have it be much more compacted and screw them back in. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I've been toying with this stuff from Triad Orbit. It's crazy how flexible and intuitive this stuff is. You can just bend it, stick it where you want, and
That looks cool.
way stronger than the cheap stuff that you see on the market. You should go through their Instagram and see some of the uses where these guys are putting this stuff. It comes from the MI industry, but some of this stuff for video use is just, it's crazy. I mean,
What do you say? What do you mean by MI?
Music industry.
Right.
Yeah. So here's one that's pretty crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So anyways, drop by their Instagram. It's Triad Orbit and take a look.
Triad
at
Orbit.
Yeah, that's what I'm using to hold my lights behind me, in front of me, and it's holding my teleprompter too. So I've got it all around me.
That's awesome. All right, next question.
Okay, I'm done here. I have to use one interface. Tom Guerrero says, is there an iconic OBS training video?
Iconic. I wonder if there's like
for the best
orchestral.
one.
I just think that iconic, when you say iconic OBS training, I feel like the soundtrack should be done by Trent Reznor, and it should be this like looming, really, really dramatic. I really want to, and now I really want to make an iconic OBS, maybe just a minute of iconic OBS training. Let's talk about inputs. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't know if anyone, is there anything that anyone has found to be earth-shattering as far as OBS goes? Roscoe, did you? Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's actually something really interesting going on in Discord right now, which is they've built a basic OBS install for teachers, and they're going to be working on this and doing some videos and stuff. So if you're just looking from the get-go how to just get up and operating, I'd say get to Discord. And it's not in the teachers, it's in the tricks and tips for
tricks
teachers.
and tips. Oh, within our Discord.
Within
Absolutely.
our Discord, yeah.
That's great. So yeah, definitely check that out. All right, next question.
Next question is from A. Mitchell's. Colin, please explain BlueStacks again. Also, how you might use it for some of the kinds of projects usually described here. Thanks.
So BlueStacks is an Android emulator, distinct from the Android development tool set, which included an emulator for years. BlueStacks also includes all of the Google Play and Google Store tools. So it tries to be a full interface. They've pivoted recently to be a desktop size mobile game playing environment, if that makes sense. But they have the ability to grab and you make use of the first camera driver that's on the host system. So if your first camera driver is a virtual camera, you can then play in whatever content you're running through your switcher into the Android environment. And so the use case that we were discussing was using Instagram and playing in highly produced content into Instagram without violating their terms of service. Jeff, do you have?
Yeah, Alex, you're muted.
Yeah, go ahead.
So BlueStacks, well, a couple things to note. First of all, you got to have a computer that can handle an emulator. And second of all, the emulators have come and gone. There are a few others out there that you might want to also check out, but keep in mind that this could be gone in 3 months. I've been through like 4 or 5 emulators.
But BlueStacks has been around for a while.
BlueStacks has been around for 5 years. It's
yeah,
not
no, I
going
get
They have a business
that, but-
behind their thing.
Yeah.
So,
But we should all continue to do everything we can to break up the Instagram's weirdness. Yeah. So Yellow Duck is the other way to grab an RTMP input. I just like to tell everybody. So
and
Yellow Duck
that's
is a
the
good
way to
one.
violate the terms of service.
Yeah, but they're not going to do anything. I mean, you may lose it. So I wouldn't do it as a high profile event through it, but you can definitely experiment with it and do relatively good events. I've only heard a couple of times Facebook
and
can
the
capriciously
BlueStacks
kill your event.
Sorry. Yeah, and the BlueStacks documentation itself explains how to bring a virtual camera into their emulator. So
Great. Paul, you had your hand up.
very convenient.
Oh, no, or not. There's like a lot of things going on over there, Paul. All right, we're gonna move on. Next question. Next question.
Okay. Beju says, hey, Beju, how would you compare LiveU's LRT to Zixi and SRT protocol? I just love all these questions with all the initials, sorry. And SRT protocols for stability and quality, aside from the bonding that LRT supports that the others don't.
I don't have any experience with it. So I think that's I mean, on its face, I think that it could work well, actually. Looking at what you'd be bonding from the LiveU, getting to Zixi and then transporting it. Now, is that transport in Zixi happening at the LiveU, or is it happening, where would that happen?
No,
or is that happening on the other end?
Now, the thing is, LiveU doesn't use Zixi as such. It uses LRT. That's their own transport protocol,
Right.
basically. It's a custom protocol. So normally you either have two options. You either go from LiveU to the LiveU receiver using LRT, or
Right.
if you're using their solo encoder, you can go to the cloud and then it converts it to RTMP as you need it. But it's got some error correction and some delay controls a little bit built into it, basically for stability or bonding or uneven networks. So I was wondering if you had any experience with how it compares to using something like Zixi. I don't think Zixi supports bonding, does it?
Well, bonding is something you do at a network level and shouldn't be protocol specific.
Yes, Zixi could probably be run over. It doesn't do the bonding itself, but it could run over a bonded network. I mean, LiveU in general obviously is very dependent on the location. So that's the challenge there, is that the LiveU is if you have a lot of people. Where LiveUs work well is when there's not a lot of people and there's a lot of cell towers. Where LiveUs don't work well is where there's a lot of people and not enough cell towers for those number of people. And so when you get to places like news gathering, they go to a press conference and there's 20 LiveUs along with thousands of other people or hundreds of other people, and they can't figure out why no one can get a connection. So or they go to a big. So that's the problem. Vegas is a good example of a place where LiveUs don't work very well because there's not enough cell towers per square mile to support Vegas very well. So those are places you just have to kind of know. So it's less about the transport and more about the fragileness of a cell network, and as they're being combined. So we use LiveUs a lot of times as backups because they do protect us from something happening in the building or rain fade and a variety of other things that if something goes wrong with the satellite or fiber or terrestrial connection that we have, we do have some kind of backup, but we very rarely use LiveUs as our primary ingest. Go ahead, Baishu.
Yeah, mainly we were just looking at using it for a couple of places where we want a little bit of stability. The connection does go down at times. It's a failover, but we don't want to lose the stream for a minute. So we're just having a failover on it. Use the LiveU basically to bond two connections through it. So it keeps on going until the failover happens properly. So I was wondering about experiences with that.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely used it. What we've done typically is we have two videos coming into our central control, one from the LiveU and one's from whatever other connection we're using. And then they're going into a switcher, and then we're able to switch back and forth quickly. So if one falls apart, we immediately switch over to the LiveU, and the viewer hopefully never notices. But the LiveUs can be a little bit unstable at times. Also, their audio. I don't know if I should say this. I'll say it anyway. Their audio is low quality, and if you are a squeaky wheel, you can get that quality increased. I'll just say that. So it's in the software, it's not in the hardware. So those are the so anyway, so the LiveU cuts a lot of corners there, but what's nice is you get a lot of graphs. One of the things you learn from using a LiveU is different cities and different locations. You learn who's got the best cell coverage, whether it's T-Mobile in the United States, T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, because you're watching the performance of all the modems all the time, and you're kind of obsessively watching it. There is another company, and for some reason, every time I say the company, I want to say SharePoint, and it's not SharePoint. I think it's Natural Point or Point. Anyway, I'll find it again. They're the main competitor to LiveU. You can buy their stuff, and they're much geekier than LiveU. So they give you a lot more control over your transports than LiveU does. So a lot of the higher end teams that we work with have moved to this other protocol, one that for some reason is in a box in my head that sits with SharePoint for some reason, and I can't get it out of that box. So like for years, I haven't been able to get it out. Every time I try to bring it up, I have to go look it up again. So anyway, so obviously their naming maybe not be the best, but the product is pretty good. Anyway, next question. And by the way, we're running a little, I mean, for 720, we're running a little low on questions. So you as an attendee, you guys need to pick up the pace a little bit. We'd like to see some more questions.
We'll probably be wrapped by 7:25.
Yeah, exactly. This will be a real short. This is a really short event here. If you guys don't start doing your job, we're doing our job. We're talking about the questions, but if you're out there, we need to see some votes. We need to see some questions. If you've got questions, this is a good time to ask them. All right, next question.
Jeff Francis says, since the Marshall CV345 is discontinued, any recommendations for small box cams with SDI?
Go ahead.
I'll
Jeff.
tell you the use case. Tucker actually recommended that camera, and you can get them for 2 or 3 times the cost, but they've discontinued it. These are for adding to concert hall PTZs to have some close-up shots of like conductor cam or the end of the keyboard, or close-up section of woodwind. So putting a CS lens on the end of them, but then kind of set and forget for that particular show, and just cut to every once in a while.
Go ahead, Jason.
I use, in fact, I'm coming right now through a Blackmagic Design Studio or Micro Studio 4K, and I think it looks fantastic. You get SDI in and out. There are some converters you need because it's not a full-size SDI. You need the tiny little ones that are kind of annoying, but I think it looks great, and that'll take a Micro Four Thirds lens.
What resolution are you looking at, Jeff?
1080 is fine.
Right.
And budget-wise, Jason, cut that in by 25, down to a quarter of that budget.
Oh, then I got nothing.
What number are you looking for?
Under 500 for the camera and lens.
Yeah, and there's some I'm trying to think of ones that are as good. The Panasonic, I believe Panasonic makes a couple lipstick cameras that are in the $200, $300 range, I think. But I'm not sure what the video quality is of those. Someone else had their hand up. Did I see somebody else? Yeah,
that was me. I've done a couple installs with these little ATA cameras. These work great for churches, and we use them all the time. ATA, little 3G SDI. They're similar to the Marshall stuff, and then they also have some 4K stuff that they've come out with. So that's my recommendation, Jeff. Take a look at ATA imaging.
Go ahead, Chris.
Is there a going back to Jason's comment about the Blackmagic Studio 4K? Is that what it's called? Mini? It's the little
Micro
cube one.
4K, yeah.
Micro. Okay, yeah, micro. Is there a definitive list either on the Blackmagic website or somewhere else that explains which Blackmagic cameras can be controlled by which Blackmagic switchers?
It's if you're a Blackmagic person, it's simple, but it's complicated for just about everybody else. I think
everybody else.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, it's simple. If it has an HDMI connector only, then it's connected to the Mini Pros or the Minis, and if it has an SDI connector only, or a combination, then it is controllable by the larger production 4Ks.
So yeah, it's complicated. The 4K and the 6K work with the ATEM minis. Everything else works with the other switchers, and it is the hard part. We're in the middle of with both the switchers and the cameras. Is there's this transition that's happening between the cameras and the switchers, where some of the switchers have the good keyer and the Teranex for every input. Some of the switchers don't, and they don't have the good keyer. So there needs to be
another
a good
grid that needs to be produced by somebody.
Just real quick, somebody posted it. I think it was in Discord or wherever. There's a little box now that talks SDI, but when it gets near the pocket cameras, it then speaks to them. So supposedly you can use a production 4K. I'll find it. I'll put the link in because I'm looking and investigating this myself.
I've seen that, and they are awesome. They at least they look awesome. But yeah,
they're $500. They're $500.
They're doing it with
$549.
The benefit though is that you can actually use a Ronin, and it will also control the Ronin. And again, it's Bluetooth, so you know your results may vary.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if I'd pay $500 for something to control it with Bluetooth. That's all I'm going to say there. And one thing about the camera, as we kind of finish that off, did you look at the Jeff? Did you look at the Marshall? They have a larger one, the CV565. It's $600, so it's a little over what you had there, but it is 1080p, and it's a Marshall, small camera. It looks like it's available it's in stock at B&H, and so
I'll take a look.
Yep, absolutely. Next question.
We now have 137 questions to answer.
Perfect.
No.
Well
13.
done, attendees. Well done.
Dorian Robinson says, can you explain the term virtual camera and how it is used in different software?
Oh, that's a pretty complicated question. Go ahead, Colin.
A virtual camera is a driver that emulates a camera to the extent that it is a video source and output. So in the typical use case, you're outputting video from a switcher or other application that outputs video that is not a hardware camera into an application that expects input from a hardware camera, for example, a web browser or Zoom, whereby you can deliver highly produced output modified by the software.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of issues with them. You'll typically see that they're not always fully implemented, fully populated in terms of descriptive strings. That was one of the problems. And I think it's still one of the problems with the Wirecast virtual camera. It comes up as camera device 0 instead of Wirecast camera. And if you look in the USB spec, they just
it does seem
populate
like
certain fields.
It's slowly getting better, I think, partially because a lot of it's the support on the other side too. So Zoom happens to be extremely good at support when it comes to virtual cameras, and many of the other services are not.
Right. So that you make a good point. In the case of Macs, access to hardware is a privileged thing. And because these virtual cameras are emulating hardware, the access to the emulated hardware is a privileged thing. And that's why there were issues accessing virtual cameras up until a month, 2 months ago.
Yep. Yeah. And so Zoom solved that much more effectively than everybody else. And so it's actually the easiest one to use most of these cameras with. Go ahead, Bill, real quick, and then we're gonna move on.
Sure. Most of the time you're going to run into these are in programs like Motion or in Unreal Engine, where it gives the user control over a virtual camera to determine the output. So you can fly these cameras or position them around in space to give the viewer a look at a virtual construction.
So there's two different definitions of a virtual camera. Both are accurate. One is a camera that you can move around in your computer graphics, whether it's Motion or Unreal or a 3D app. And the other one is a virtual camera that takes a variety of inputs or a switcher and feeds it into acts like a camera inside of your video conferencing software. And next question.
Next question, Zach Schwartz says, as someone who has successfully run a successful conference recording business for 20 years, do you have any suggestions for me to retool in this new era? I have a few local South Florida videography and live streaming clients, and I'm looking to develop more of that for the future. Any suggestions? Thanks.
Well, I think one of the things that we see is kind of slowly growing on our side beyond live is doing recorded conferences. So pre-recorded conference that is going to then be played out as live or then just made available. And that's starting to kind of build up steam in our business. And so it's something, if you're recording, there's a couple different ways to do it. Of course, there is I'm going to just record a Zoom, which is the kind of the low level version of that. Second level up is I'm going to create a Zoom that 10 people get into or 6 people get into. I'm going to have a computer or some kind of output for each person, a screen for each person. I'm going to record those and then be able to edit them back. The third and more complicated version, which is the kind of the higher end version, is I'm going to do a point-to-point connection with Zoom or Skype or whatever that you're going to use for each person, I'm going to build a cross connect in my mixer and in my switcher, so that basically you're building what Zoom does in hardware. That gives you an enormous amount of control over how you interact with the endpoints, and is going to be the highest level of record that you can do online. And that's what we do, just because it's a better value add. And we can have comms that go back to the people, and we can record them, and we don't have shared audio. There's a bunch of things that you can do there. So if you're looking, those are different levels, and all of them, we're seeing all of them have a business case. We're doing a little bit of all of that. So with some, we're just running their Zooms. With some, we're capturing some people, and with some, we're doing the point-to-point. So Jeff, Jason, and Chris, and for the rest of it, we went from not having very many questions to a lot of questions. So try to keep your answers to 15 seconds each for the rest of the hour. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So yeah, that's basically been my business model for the last 3 months. Is we would bring people in via Zoom or Skype, and then do a either one-on-one conversation or single conversation with a presentation attached to it. VMworld is a perfect example. We've done this for years, and now we've got to do it virtually. So I think the bigger thing is we haven't gotten to that point where there's things that are going to change in the next 365 days that will all of a sudden change the way we're going to say how to do it right now. Yeah. And we just haven't run into that just yet.
Go ahead, Jason.
What Alex was referring to is live to tape, of course, and I'm going to assume that you already have a conference recording business, which means you have inputs in the way that you want to do them. And under those circumstances, a web presenter or an ATEM Mini Pro will allow you to add live streaming if that's what you're after. I read the question a few times, and that's the best I can kind of interpret from what you're after.
Go ahead, Chris.
Offer the ability to log into an event, highlight as many people as the client wants, and ISO record them. I would pay for that. Probably we can do a lot of it ourselves, but it may mean having 6 or 10 or 20 machines. But if conference recording is what you do, that might be. Something.
Our largest system has 10 computers that are kind of all tied into HyperDecks. And so we just hit, you can do it with software and everything else, but we can just output, and those 10 can be either cross-connected the way I was talking about before, or they can record screens passively. But that is, that's kind of how we have it. And we haven't actually used 10 at one time, but we can, and so, but I think that is the, there's a business that's going to keep happening there. I will always argue that live is going to be more compelling, but you can record as well. Next question.
Tolf Bergstrom says, what are the benefits of routing MixPre audio through an ATEM Mini versus straight USB?
Sync, I think. Go ahead, Guy.
One of the things, I'm actually running it straight into the computer right now because there is still some noise, which Ed Willock, who was on a couple episodes ago, him and I have been going back and forth as to how to best clean this up, but there's still a little bit of noise in the channel. We're figuring out that it's consumer line level going in, but the benefit for me is to take that input and have audio follows video. So for instance, like right now, I want to do a play out on this iPad and push in my video. I can't hear the audio without routing it through the MixPre. So benefits are audio follows video. The other benefit is being able to adjust that level on the fly. Of course, you also have your Fairlight, you have all your EQ, and you have your compressor limiter. But in the MixPre, it's just so much cleaner at the moment. Once we figure out the exact levels to get in, so it's, again, consumer line level coming in, you just got to dial it in right and then get rid of that noise. There's a little art pre box that some people are using to convert XLR line level, pro level audio to consumer level, and that seems to be cleaning things up. But we're still working with this church. Was one of the guys that was in here that was having the same trouble. But Victor, I see raising his hand. He's on the same boat. Go ahead, Victor.
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I'm going to echo everything that Guy just said. I have cleaned up the audio part with just one of these little lifter things that I'll put a link in the thing. So I think the benefits are there. For me, it's been dismal. Every time I've come on the show and used the ATEM audio, sync falls apart. At 1 minute I sound great. The next minute I'm either like, whoa, you're in space. So I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm going to blame it on me. So whoever finds the solution, on down, but right now it's frustrating at best.
It does seem like somehow the ATEM is not keeping sync correctly. You know, that it's not tracking when it's being used as a webcam, and or perfectly. And so I think that there's because you'll come in. Victor is our point. The primary point there. He comes in and he's fine, hasn't changed anything, and 5 minutes later he's way out of sync. That really feels like it's the hardware. All right, next question.
Next question would be Ricardo from South Florida, possibly. Is there a recommended low-cost earphone, single ear, to use along with the Pile mic?
Go ahead, Colin.
So the earphone that I've been recommending is the HYS earpiece. It's the third link that in the set of links that I dropped in chat. It looks like this. I've wired mine together as a single thing. It's an acoustic tube earpiece with a clip. They're $14 for a set of two, I think. And you can't buy them as single pieces, but they are single ear, single carrier devices. Look like that.
There you go. Perfect. Next question.
Ricky Gore from Nashville says, I often have a need for a presenter to join via webcam and share his slides at the same time. The only workaround I've found is to have the presenter join as a guest on one browser and join with screen share from another browser. Have any of you found a better solution to this? I've done this and got cut off.
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I mean, an obvious way to do this would be preload your slides. If Alex was running your show, you would give them to Alex and he would run the slides. But yeah, Keynote will also do it. The remote Keynote is fantastic and it's full resolution and it works really well. But other than that, yeah, it's a pain.
Yeah, there's a variety of ways of doing it. One of the things that Grant built that he's not here today, but he built something as a little web page that will forward it. So you have the presentation on the far end, and then you have on the
Pickle.
It's like basically a web page of a Pickle. so you can just push it on an iPhone or something and forward advance it. But you need someone on the other end with some kind of OBS or something that they can switch back and forth between you and the content there. Next question.
What is the
go ahead, Chris.
etymology of calling a remote control that advances a slide a pickle?
I don't know. I don't know where that comes from. I just know that it is.
I know everybody uses it, but it makes no sense.
Isn't it just the size and shape of a pickle? The primary.
No. Yeah, the old ones. The old
someone
ones.
probably someone prominent enough that does enough of these called it a pickle, I'm sure, and then it became a pickle.
Maybe it's a pickle because if it doesn't work, then you're in a pickle because you have to get it to work.
I don't think there was any meetings about it. I think somebody started calling it a pickle, and it was the person who cross-pollinated often enough between different shows, and then everyone started calling it a pickle. I literally, that's how I think a lot of these things. That's how a C47 probably showed up, was that somebody had something there that. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney. You were going to show something.
Yeah, the old presentation controllers, which they don't make anymore, it looked like this, which was kind of shaped like a pickle, and you hold it in your hand. Maybe that's where it came from. Yeah.
I also vaguely remember something about like a fighter pilot having some kind of control or something like that called a pickle.
I think it literally was just somebody started calling it. A lot of these weird nomenclatures that we have in production is someone started calling it that, and then everyone.
Sometimes it's a good story. This one turned out to be a bad story. So let's move on.
Christian
Ortiz says,
the pickle is the button that drops the bombs in the plane.
Yep,
I have heard mention of controlling Blackmagic ATEMs remotely. Does the control interface do HTTPS? I've heard mention of connecting remotely by using a VPN. I have not heard anyone mention controlling by port forwarding to the ATEM.
We haven't done it, so I don't know. I mean, we've used VPNs for that, and usually because the ATEM is not the only thing we're controlling. So usually we're controlling the entire stack on the other end, and it's just been easier for us to send a small VPN hardware unit that plugs into the WAN or into the local internet and or local connection goes through the WAN and comes back to us, and we just have control of everything. So the way we set that up is that all the machines based on their MAC addresses are assigned. They're all on DHCP. They're all assigned IPs except for the switchers, which are not DHCP. And we assign all of those IPs. That way we can get into our X32 or Yamaha QL1, even our HyperDecks, as well as our switchers. And so having all of that in one place is super useful. Victor, and then Jeff.
Yeah, if you take a look at the ATEM Mini setup for IP, it sure doesn't have anything having to do with a port number. So I'm going to guess that the answer prima facie is no. And by the way, Chris, I did put the apple on my logo.
Yeah, it's likely that one could write an HTTP interface. The API is open, but you would need a server somewhere within your network that would publish that out, and you could do it through port forwarding. Although I wouldn't recommend it because you don't want to expose something like that on the public internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jeff.
Request for a second hour talking through your remote setup of how to set that up with the VPN hardware and connecting to everything.
Absolutely. Put it in the second hour in Discord, and we'll get that into a Monday soon. We'll do. It's a pretty straightforward one to talk through. Jason?
It's worth mentioning. So I've been going back and forth with Christian on Makuna. It's worth mentioning that there is no HTTPS. What Alex is referring to is VPNing in. There is no inherent security for ATEM control. None. What Alex and I speculated about last week had to do with whether or not the web encoder is going to have some sort of because
this is the
Greg,
Streambridge.
Right. I'm sorry, the Streambridge, because Greg had mentioned something and he just dropped it there, and we don't know yet because it's not out. Grant, sorry, yeah.
Grant. So Grant mentioned that you'd be able to control the switcher, and all of us went, "Hello," and so, but we haven't seen any data, and I don't think anybody else has either. Next question.
Philip Oler says, did my first tennis event live stream. Oh, I've cut tennis. Used ATEM Mini Pro and New Blue for graphics. Some of my graphics had black or dark blue in them and had some transparency in the key. Any way to avoid this besides changing colors? No. Is there a way to output a matte or alpha in New Blue?
Yeah, I'm not clear. I'm not sure. I don't know if about New Blue. Go ahead, Jeffrey, and then Jason.
It depends on the type of New Blue effects program you have. I know that I actually use New Blue effects on a completely different computer, and I go through NDI, but there's many different, they do have other options, like if you're connecting to a TriCaster or if you're doing live. So it does do alpha on that. So
does it have a key fill? Does it have a key fill out?
I'll have to check. Give me like a minute to look at it, and I'll be right back.
Jason?
So many of these problems could be fixed by creating a Targa file correctly that if you do it correctly,
well, but this is the problem.
Every app is going to fix it.
Yeah, but here's the issue: is not loading. We're not talking about loading Targa files into the ATEM. We're talking about number one is the Mini doesn't load Targa files. I don't think doesn't load sequences. I believe, and then the second thing is that the issue is that when you outboard all your graphics to something, whether it's as basic as Keynote or as complicated as a BizRT, what you're doing is you have a much better way to manage all of those. You've got lots of lower thirds. You have to change them on the fly. You have to fire them in as needed, and so it definitely gives you more scale when you start using these larger, more robust CG systems to do this. And that can be. I mean, it can be Presenter Pro. It can be, MIDI.
Right, it's any playout deck.
Exactly. And MIDI is probably, a nice inexpensive one that would work as well if you load them all in pre-rendered. The thing that New Blue will give you is the ability to type stuff in real quickly or import graphics and be able to pump them back out. What you need is a key fill out, and you need a Decklink card or a Ultra Studio that's going to be able to do the two outputs out. And if New Blue supports it, which Jeffrey's about to tell us.
It supports NDI, AirSend, HDMI, PNG sequence. It does a direct to OBS. It's got an HDMI key. if you want to choose, but I just use the alpha channel, the black channel for lower thirds. I'd show you my lower thirds.
So it
but I don't
doesn't
have
do, but
set
it
up.
doesn't list a key fill as an output, like an Ultra Studio key fill. I feel like it,
It does
must.
it says HDMI key of black,
Yeah, but
blue,
it's-
and green.
Yeah,
but
that
that's I
doesn't-
don't think that's the same
that's
thing.
not-
It does also do a PNG sequence setup.
That's not it either.
Okay.
It's weird.
So yeah.
Yeah, so depending on what you're using, if you're also if you're on a Mac, Softron makes a great. I can't remember the CG Live CG or CG on Air is a good one for that as well, and it does do a key fill. I can guarantee that. Anyway, next question.
You know, as everything went to editorial type stuff, I saw that, and I have a thought here. I can't. I'm moving on. Victor says, "Hey, Victor, what are the recommended C-stand low-cost alternative?" Don't cut corners when you're putting stuff over your head.
Bill.
Yeah, the C-stands are virtually indestructible. They've been making them for decades. So look on the used market. I know it's harder now that we're under COVID lockdown and we can't go out and visit people and buy stuff, but anything important, you don't really want to cheap out on that. I agree.
Jeffrey, real quick.
Drum hardware. Go to the music store. Look for old drum cymbal stands. They're just as strong as a C stand is, and they're probably a little bit more adjustable.
I just there's such a system around C stands, and they're a highly commoditized market. So there's not, it doesn't get much cheaper for the hardware. When Chinese manufacturers can't get it any lower, you're at the basement. You know, as far as how much it's going to cost, like you're at the ground floor. You know, and the ones that I have a couple Matthews here, and then I have a couple that I think there's a couple of them here that were Chinese just as a test, and they were great. They're a little bit, and what happened is when the Chinese started putting them out, then I stopped having to buy Chinese because Avenger came down. You know, the Avengers came down so that I could buy them. But they're about $150 is about the, you know, $135 to $165 a C stand is about what is the ballpark, and it's not gonna get any lower. And you know, especially if you're gonna hang things over your head, I would make sure not to cut too far into that issue. Go ahead, Bill.
And whatever you do, if you have a chance at the same time to buy a grip arm with the C stand, it makes it so much more usable.
Yeah, you want at least one, because you do all kinds of funny things. Like I'm about to put up some lights for my office so I can do this when I'm in my office, and I'm basically using the arms to build a goalpost, and then I'll put a bunch of older lights that I have up there for that. Anyway, next question.
Karen Foote says, what are some strategies for finding new video clients during a pandemic? Ads, where to go to bid on RFPs or job boards?
I am not good at this. I'll let you know for like what I tend to do is I do things like what we're doing here, which is I get into the industry, I find a place that I can be useful, and I talk about it, or I post content, or I talk about guides on how to do something, or talk through things with folks. And I find that generates a lot of work. And so I've done the same thing for, like, when I started DV Garage, my first company a long time ago, all I did is start putting videos up about rusty things and beat up things and little circles and everything else. I put up one a day, and I put up a couple, and before I knew it, I had a following, and then I posted something out. And so but I even did that in the 90s. I just wrote articles. So writing into the industry, thought pieces and guides and so on and so forth, has been the way I do it. I don't know how to do it. I don't really understand marketing or advertising. I just understand how to try to be useful within the community that you're trying to be part of. Go ahead, George and Chris.
So it's office hours has definitely been a help for me. I mean, I'm starting back to get calls, and most of those calls are virtual, Zoom, so forth. So if you are already in the industry, you know, it's a little bit, if you're already in the industry and you have been kind of looking at live for a long time, it's going to be easy for you to transition. It's definitely, everything is still word of mouth as far as for right now for me. You know, it's definitely sales is not my strong point, but definitely word of mouth is the best way right now.
And Chris and Greg, real quick.
couple of things. One of the best bits of advice my father ever gave me is he said, when you lose a job, tell everybody you know. Don't keep it. Don't internalize it. Also, it's really important that in this industry, especially, and I tell people this all the time, companies do not hire companies. If you think that's what happens, you're wrong. People hire people. I have worked for the same people through multiple companies over the years. And really, the most important thing is to maintain your personal relationships with people. If you're not working, you need to call everybody in your address book and just say, hi, how are you doing? How's the kids? How's the life? You know, be in touch with people. People hire people.
Greg?
Totally agree. Networking and just staying in touch and letting everybody know what you're doing.
And just don't call it networking. When you call it networking, it just feels dirty. Make sure your friends are okay. That's what I would do.
And I mean, the thing is that the model here is that we have people joining the Zoom. At some point, some people become, show up on as panelists to become useful. They're also useful. We all get to know each other via the chat in Mokana. We get to know each other more in Discord, but being active and not being weird about it or trying to sell anything, but being active in these kinds of communities, whether it's this one or other communities that you're interested in, event companies or whatever, event organizations, builds up your relationship with a lot of people. But it's also why we kind of push people to use their real names, use their photos, all those things, because it helps build that community where we get to know each other I think that people are already in this group hiring each other. So being active and being useful in this group and then also being appropriate. This is the one thing to know is you get an online forum. It's really easy. It will take one post to burn your reputation into the ground or burn your connection to the community into the ground. So, being useful without being over the top or being inappropriate is pretty important. Phil?
One of the things that I do also, especially in these times, is if you have friends that lose their jobs, give them a little extra TLC, chat with them, help them get other contacts that you might know. That equity goes a long way. They're going to land somewhere. They're going to need help. And it's a really good karma buildup kind of a thing. So especially folks that are losing jobs, take them out to lunch usually, but in this case, just to have a chat with them and ask them what they need.
And it's not a short play, this is a lifestyle. It's not how do I get work this week? The work that I have right now, and I have as much work as I can do through February of next year. The work I have now was all driven from people that I've been helping and working with for 5 years. And so that's and built up a relationship, not because I was networking, just because I like them, and so the other thing I don't do is I don't hang out with people I don't like. I don't try to just network and, I don't like them, but I'm still going to try to network them.
That's why I can't have lunch with you.
Yeah, Fenwick. Anyway, but it is an important concept is I try to find people that I'm comfortable with and that I enjoy and that I respect. And I surround myself with those people all the time, and people that I don't like or I don't respect. I don't do anything. I just stop calling. I don't have time. It's just a matter of keeping people in that circle that you're interested in, because having that authentic relationship is the most important part. Go ahead, Jason, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, +1 to what Alex said. There's no trick to business. I've been doing this for a decade, and it really is a lifestyle. Treat people with respect, never lie, do what you say you're going to do, and, treat people like they are your friends. And I've always had plenty of work. I mean, it's just as much as I can handle.
Yeah. Next question.
Rachel says, I made a decision to look at one school who just distributed over 800 laptops to pre-K through 4th grade. And my question is, how does a school handle maintenance and tutorials to operate these laptops?
Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
My son does this in the local school district, and how do they do it? Through a lot of labor. It frustrated him that they they imaged 500 iPads, and then of course the bosses said, and now we want to change the software. So guess what? They get to re-image those 500 iPads. So it's a lot of labor, a lot of love. It does take a lot of tech support. As far as tutorials, that's really up to the teachers. The IT staff doesn't really get to pick the tutorials. They can recommend stuff, but really the teachers get to decide exactly what the students will see.
And again, and we won't get into the religion wars here of what laptops, but I will say that from most schools that we've worked with, the highest maintenance is Windows, followed by Chromebooks, followed by Mac. So as far as the maintenance and overhead or iOS, the maintenance and overhead, iOS was a disaster when it first came out. The iPad solutions were a disaster, which is why Google took so much ground, is because Apple completely fumbled the rollout. You couldn't image things easily. And but those are, it just depends on the platform as well. Go ahead, Jason, 15 seconds, and then we're going to go into a super speed round.
Depends very heavily on the platform, but at the end of the day, iPads are much easier. I'm going to assume these are PCs, in which case, good luck. It's a lot of work.
Next question.
Next question is from, I apologize, I can't pronounce your name. Hello to everyone. I am using a Studio Projects B3 mic link. Going to a Behringer UB1202FX mixer and then to an external sound card into Zoom. I noticed that my audio is not very good, especially not the treble. Any tips to improve this? Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Work through the chain. So listen at the mixer. Does the mic sound good there? If it does, listen to your sound card on your computer. Does the mic sound good there? Then go to Zoom. You've got to break the chain into pieces.
Good troubleshooting.
Yep, good, Jason.
iSilencer 3.0 is from a company called IFI, and they are fantastic if you're having very specific noise problems.
Next question.
Next question from Martin Reutman. Can anyone send the drivers, Mac OS, for the Canon T6i to use a webcam? The Canon site is not working. Thanks. I will use it with my Canon T3i for someone suggested.
So if anyone has that link, go ahead and post it in the chat, and then we'll keep moving. All right, next question.
Okay. Jeff Dooley from Chicago says, what do you mean by consumer level and pro level in microphone audio paths? High Z or low Z impedance?
High Z and low Z are yet another another format. Greg, do you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, that's well, I don't want to get into the technicalities of it, maybe, but high Z stuff is more typical, like a guitar input, and they do make some high Z mics that can go into a guitar amp, for instance. Yeah, Jeff, go ahead. You
go ahead, Jeff.
So first about level, pro line level is +4 dBu, consumer line level is -10 dBV. Those are not 14 dB apart like we might think they are. They're actually 11.8 dB apart. So most pro microphones work at that, but they've got to come up, 30, 40, 50, 60 dB of amplification to get up to that level. Most pro gear is low impedance out and high impedance input. As Greg was saying, instruments are a strange thing, and some of those consumer mics have strange impedances. The last thing about line level pro versus consumer is typically pro is balanced, having a hot and a cold in a shield, and consumer is unbalanced. So you need to take care when going from one to the other.
Next question. We're almost there. No,
James
that's a Zoom
Babbitt
one. We're not.
says,
that's a Zoom question.
Oh, sorry, we can't get
Someone's messing with the.
I'm trying.
You went all over the place. All right.
Answer. Yeah.
Can we have the second hour? So go to. Can we have a second hour on the advanced? On Meet features? We can. I will say that we don't know Meet very well. I don't know Meet very well. So if we have someone here, if there's enough people in the second hour suggestions that vote on it, we can talk about Meet. But it's not something
that's Microsoft Meet, right?
No, it's Google Meet. And so it's Microsoft Teams. Yeah. We know Zoom. We're going to talk about Zoom, and we know Zoom really well. Meet, I don't know as well, other than getting into it for meetings. So we'll take a look at it, which is, again, we're sort of ironic because all I did was Hangouts for 4 years. But the Meet is basically kind of a stripped down version. We'll take a look at it. Next question.
Michael says, I have several Nikon DSLRs I use for pre-records and a lot of glass. Looking for a solution that would enable me to use my lenses for streaming with a camera that doesn't time out and won't break the bank. Any recommendations?
We talked about this last week or over the weekend. The Sony cameras, the 50, I believe the 5100, is that the right? 5400, 6100 are in the $400 to $500 range. And I think Loria was using it last Thursday. So if you go back to that session, and Chris, we don't want to clear out those until we need them out of the Q&A. Drives me crazy. Anyway, so anyway, but yeah, so Loria was using, I believe, a 5400, which looks really good. So I think that I would look at those as kind of a cost-effective one. Beju?
Yeah, just commenting on that, that Sony is probably the only game in town, unless you want to buy a Nikon with a Nikon adapter, because you can get adapters for Nikon glass to Sony. And I think you might get some for Micro Four Thirds, but it's more limited, I think.
Yep. Next question.
Okay.
We're almost done. We're going to finish. We're going to go a little heavy just to finish
Paul
these off, because there's not a lot of
says-
Zoom questions. People ask for an extra Zoom. So here's the thing. We're going to answer these last couple questions. We're going to go a little heavy, and partially because people ask for a second hour on Zoom, but we're not getting very many questions about Zoom. So we'll discuss it among ourselves. But as attendees, the onus is on you to ask questions about Zoom. So if you've got questions about how to run a Zoom, how to work with Zoom, this is the next hour is all about Zoom. So so we'll talk about different techniques and how we do it, and we can make some stuff up for a while, but it'll be a short hour if we don't get more questions from the attendees. All right, next question.
Paul Wallace says, so TikTok has to be sold in 43 days. Twitter has expressed interest. Who should buy TikTok?
All I got to say is if Twitter buys them, that is like the biggest historical error, not biggest, I think Skype was the biggest from Microsoft, but they bought Vine, then they closed Vine, and now they're looking at buying TikTok. It's like for probably 100 times, they're going to end up buying TikTok if they buy them for 100 times more than what they bought Vine for. It's probably the math.
Yeah, Twitter is where streaming video goes to die.
Well, yeah, I mean, they bought Periscope. That, Periscope was the problem with Periscope is that it wasn't finished. Like, so what happened is that Periscope was getting built. Meerkat came out right before South by Southwest, and suddenly Twitter panicked because Meerkat came out, and Twitter was like, had to get something, and they bought an app that was still in beta, and then never really. This is always the mistake: is you stay attached to your code. What they should have done as soon as they bought Periscope was get rid of all the code and rewrite it from the ground up, and take whatever it was, like take the idea. And I don't know what they thought they were going to get out of that for $400 million. I think it was $400 million, but it was just a pile of, garbage, and it never really has outlived the interface for, it got better as someone who streamed a lot to Twitter in the professional days. They had MLBAM, which was the MLB built an infrastructure to stream Major League Baseball. And also, Mike, I don't think you need to spotlight, and I'm not sure why you're spotlighting people who aren't talking, but it is, I would just go to speaker mode rather than if someone's talking, rather than spotlighting them, because it keeps on changing my frame. Anyway, so what was I talking about? So MLB made an infrastructure to serve Major League Baseball securely, and they got really, really, really good at it. And then so they started doing it for services called MLBAM, and then that got bought by Disney, which is now Disney Plus, like the infrastructure behind it, and it's incredibly good. But for a long time, Twitter, if you're a professional client, you would just stream to MLBAM, and they would stream it to Twitter. Like it just worked. And then when they started dropping all their clients, and we went back to Periscope, and Periscope is, I'm trying not to use the word dumpster fire every day, but Periscope is kind of a dumpster fire. And so so they don't have any no real infrastructure to do that well. And so but I don't think it's live. I think they're trying to figure out. I mean, obviously, I think TikTok at this point is considerably bigger from a following than Twitter. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
First of all, I don't know what type of patents or anything that TikTok owns that anybody could buy. But I'm going to throw this theory out there, and that is, if they're not shopping for a different place, maybe they're shopping to bundle. Many companies, what they'll do is they'll buy other companies to make them look better to then sell. So what
Yeah,
if,
I don't think that's possible here.
what if, yeah, I know, but let me finish. What if Twitter ends up buying TikTok and then Microsoft ends up buying Twitter?
I don't think it's possible. The problem is if Twitter absorbs TikTok, they'll be too big to bundle. Like they're too big to buy at that point. You know, it's too much to swallow. I don't think Microsoft would go after TikTok, but I don't think Microsoft's going to go after TikTok and Twitter. It's just too much money. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I was just going to comment, you brought it up, that the most of the speculation in the regular media has been Microsoft acquiring them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, TikTok would probably have, as stated in the media, Twitter would have less regulatory hoops to get over than Microsoft would buying something like TikTok. But anyway, it's interesting that it is a big platform, and the platform is, if you're not on TikTok, you're not watching it, you should. I'm just letting you know. You can put it on your own phone. I don't know how you protect yourself from it, or if you're afraid of that or whatever. But it's a really interesting platform that's maturing very quickly, faster than I've seen any platform mature, and while staying fairly simple. And it just is. It's interesting. You know, it was a lot of, like YouTube before it. YouTube was a couple of years of garbage, and then suddenly creators started getting really good at it. They kind of locked in and started building. And I think that's what we're starting to see with TikTok as well. The garbage is starting to fall away, and the more interesting content is picking up. Go ahead, Bill.
Can't you just run it inside a VPN? Does that give you enough protection?
I don't care. I don't worry about it. I have a phone that's a non-secure phone, so I use it for that kind of thing, and so there's nothing else on it. So I'm not particularly worried about it, because all it does is things that I don't want to do with my regular phones. Anyway, next question.
Last question. Ernest Floyd says, when is the next Unreal session?
Probably in September. Right now we focus the Saturdays on the educators, and we just want to support educators right now going into the school year. I don't know how far we'll do that or how long, but right now it's indefinite until we kind of get figure some stuff out. I think educators are in a really tight place right now, and so we want to have a forum for them to ask questions and just try to help them. And I've tried to be more civil. I hope I'm doing a better job about it. I kind of tend to be a grenade throwing educator, and so I've stashed them, and so we're trying to just really work with folks with their challenges. And we've got a great set of folks on Friday and Saturday that are a bunch of educators that are providing some great input. So I think we're going to stick with that for a little while and see where we go from there. All right, time to shift subjects. We went from, again, having very few questions to lots of questions. So now we're ready to roll. All right, next question.
James Babbitt says, Zoom, this is for Zoom. The Zoom invitation from office hours includes my first and last name. Where are the Zoom settings to email meeting invitations to a group of email addresses?
What happens when other people, when you click on the little I, do you get the ZDW link, Chris? Like
when I click on it, I get,
does it end in ZDW?
Yes, it does.
Yes.
Okay, that's the link that you can share. That's the invite link. So your link is not one to share, and I'll post it into Makana right now. So that's the link you can share. So if you go up to the I in the upper left and you click on it, that is the share link. The link that you get is you, and if you go into it that way, there'll be more than one of you here, and one of them will be you, and one of them will not be you. So that's the key there. Next question.
Next question from Jesse. Hey, Jesse.
Okay. So folks don't see it as an attendee. Sorry about that. So that's the panelists. So I'll get better. In the announcements, I felt like I was spammy by saying it every single day. So I don't share the link every single day. And so I'll put it, yeah, it's in Mukana right now, and I'll try to make sure I do it at least every other day or so, that I share the links to make sure you have it. I didn't realize that the webinar participants didn't have the image. And then also our reminders, which is also coming out today instead of yesterday, always have the link in it as well. So if you go back to any of the reminder emails that you'll see the link there, so that it's available, but that's the link you want to share. Next question.
Jesse, Sound Mixer SF. Hey, Jesse. Has anyone had the opportunity to demo Live Call Connect using Zoom on a TC2 Elite?
I don't think so.
It's
Okay,
interesting
yeah,
when
thanks. Just a little background on what it is. It's basically a way to extract all of the individuals from a Zoom grid and bring them in as ISOs. It's on
What?
a TriCaster system.
A TriCaster does that?
On a TriCaster.
And it brings all of them in?
I think so. Yeah, I'm not
I
sure
think
about
it's
all.
just
There's probably a
9.
limit, but yeah.
I think it's 9.
9.
Great, thanks.
Interesting. Yeah, no, haven't played with it. That's interesting. And it's grabbing it. I find that
I
interesting.
love the
how it's
look on
grabbing
your
it.
face when you get genuinely interested in something, because I can see the gears turning.
Yeah,
I was theorizing as to how this worked when I saw that feature. I'm assuming they're running some sort of virtual machine where they have a virtual machine for Zoom, exporting Zoom ISOs, and one for exporting, Skype ISOs, and one for exporting whatever other, source ISOs that they're grabbing. And I'm guessing they're doing it through NDI, through localhost, or through the host machine, which is the TriCaster itself.
What could possibly go wrong?
The real question is, who sets the resolution? Because as I talk, my resolution changes. But if
it would grab, if you ISO'd all of them, if you had a virtual machine that ISO, and each machine inside of it was ISOing each one, they'd all be pushing out at 720p. I mean, if you had the right license or whatever. So it could work. But man, putting all of my records or all of my feeds into one computer, especially a TriCaster, would give me pause. All right.
So
that's all I'd say.
someone, Alex, needs to go buy one so we can study it.
Totally.
No,
I just like the
how it works.
concept here,
I like the concept. I like hardware too. I just like safety. So so I think that would frighten me a lot to have my whole show in a box, especially a TriCaster. I have deep scars across my back that were driven in by a really large TriCaster sword. Anyway, next question.
Dorian Robinson says, office hours makes the average Zoom meeting look really bad. Thank you. Can you explain all the moving parts of running office hours in detail? Well,
it's discipline. It's all about people
months.
not interrupting other people.
There we go. Exactly.
Very meta, Colin.
So there's a couple things about office hours. I mean, I'll spend a little time on this of just some of the theories and some of the process that we have here. Is number one is there is some level of discipline with some level of looseness. So we don't, I think there were points in time when I was more strict than I am now, but we still hold a pretty tight line. So, we don't have a lot of swearing. We don't, we also spend a lot of time on audio because I believe that audio is the most important part of a live stream or pretty much any content. And so we do mic checks. The mic checks make a big difference. The mic checks do a couple of different things. One is that they do a security check for us. We had, in the early days, we had people jump in that wouldn't show themselves or wouldn't really talk through things. And then it turned out that they were inappropriate. So it allows us to lock that. It's one of the reasons we lock it down after that, is that we've now seen everybody. We've decided that they're relatively normal. And generally people, going through that is useful for us, but it also, we all learn from each other. So we're all learning, everybody else is, and there's a certain level of peering that goes on here where we're learning from each other. We're copying each other's audio pipelines. We're, making it better each day. There's a certain level of competition. I think that we have a certain number of people who, like people here are constantly upgrading their systems. So because when you're with a bunch of other people that have a really high quality system, it's just hard to feel as comfortable. And so you see this kind of slow evolution of the panelists in what they do to improve it. And it's hard when someone isn't critiquing you. It's hard to know because you don't hear yourself when you're in Zoom. So you think that everything's fine, and then it's not. So a meter helps a lot. So this WLM meter lets us, just getting all the audio to be the same is a thing. And then again, as we start to work with it, I think that's part of the quality. Again, a lot of us, the ones that are here in the panel, are very passionate about the how they look, and so we're constantly seeing that evolution, and we again learn from each other. I think from a process oriented thing, one of the things is again clean show, which I take pretty seriously. I really feel like if I was uncomfortable with with my kids watching the show, then we've gone too far. Not because I think that, not because I'm like that all the time, but because I don't think that I think it's just lazy and unprofessional to do it something less than that. And so I feel like that's a better way, and I think it's more inclusive. That I think we want to be. I think we've been pretty careful, and I think naturally just been inclusive to a variety of different backgrounds and nationalities and all kinds of other things, and all the different pieces of that. So I think that has helped work. We have the fact that we do it every day has allowed this to evolve very fast. So you have to remember that, like, for how many episodes have we done? 135, 100, I don't really keep track. It's 135 or 140 or 136 or something like that. We've done that in 135 days. so that would take us 2.5 years to do in a weekly show.
This is 139 today.
139. Okay. So in 139 days, we've done 139 shows. And so that is allowed us to evolve at a rate much faster than everyone else, and both as a community, as well as just technically being able to work through it. So I think that those things are really important. And we talk to clients all the time about, well, they want to do an event. I'm like, what you really want to do is a lot of events, at least a weekly event. Now, daily is, especially going through the weekends, takes some commitment. But I think that at least a weekly event. And part of what you're doing is you're training your audience as much as you're training yourself, and as much as you're training you're figuring out the pipeline. You're training the audience that our audience knows that we're going to listen to them, so that we have a lot of questions and we tell them when we're running low, and they fill the pipe back up again. And so people here know that, and we built tools that allow us to we built tools that make it even easier for us to manage those things. And so anyway, so I think that's part of it. From a technical perspective, we've got a couple things going on. Mike here is cutting the show. We usually have somebody editing the show so that I don't have to think about it, so that the attendees can see that. We have someone else, either Chris Fenwick or Phil Langer are doing the Q&A. Bill Davis has done it a couple times, and we'll keep on passing that around to have other people work on it. So not having the host have to read all the questions helps. It allows me to be present. As a host, I'm very present. People who have tried to Discord me or text me to tell me something's wrong will have found out pretty quickly that I don't even look look down. Maybe I look at the questions to kind of try to get ahead every once in a while, but generally I don't think of anything for 3 hours other than this, except for there's a little break where I have breakfast and you guys do mic checks and I go and have breakfast and make my tea. But outside of that, it is I don't think about anything else, which is very relaxing for me. Most of my day is being in the middle of a bunch of other things, and I just don't do that here. But I think that's really important. I think that a lot of people who are running these meetings, you see them trying to keep up with notes and trying to take text things and trying to, getting other people to do that is important. The Discord is super, super useful because it allows us to keep the conversation going between sessions. So there's a whole community and we're dealing with lots of other things and in more detail when we're not here in Zoom. And so that community building, I think, is really, really important. And then the mechanics of, we send out, usually every Sunday, sometimes Mondays if my weekends are busy, we send out a little thing to remind people of what's actually happening. And so that process is pulling all the names out of Zoom and then putting them into MailChimp, and sending you all an email that lets you know what's going to happen this week. So I do think that the verticals help a little bit. The second hours are nice because we get to focus on something like Zoom. But those are some of the pieces of it. I think I like webinars because it gives people a choice of whether they want to be on air or not. I feel like meetings, everybody comes in their windows, and to me, it's a little bit of chaos. I do believe there's advantages to meetings, the ability to break into smaller sessions, and there's reasons that makes sense. But I think that the webinar platform has worked really well for us because a lot of you join and simply watch because you've chosen to do that. Because the reason I know that you've chosen to do that is because I tell you every morning that you could jump on the panel if you wanted to, and you don't. so that is, and then and we're going to keep on trying to make that more and more available. So that's kind of my breakdown of what's working. Not so much technical, but that is the how we're thinking about it. And some people ask me, like, can I do this? Can I do is it okay with you if I do office hours or that model for my organization or my company? Absolutely. This is just hopefully a template that all of you will improve on and come back and tell me what you're doing better. Go ahead, George.
I think, and kudos to what we're doing here. It's definitely transformational when I go on the outside. I think right now everyone should take the office hour model as far as doing webinars. I did an event last week where we put the Zoom on the big screen on 9 by 12, and we had about 60 people in it's a meeting, but you have half of those people, or maybe 10, that's on camera, and everyone else, cameras are off. And one of the things we have done with Zoom is say, hey, if you're not going to be on camera, you cannot be on the panels. And I think it really looks cheesy when you have a bunch of folks on screen and it's just 2 people with cameras on.
Well,
and
I feel like there's something here that we're testing, and I don't have a solution for it. Like, I feel like we're on the curve of a new kind of media where this show is really a show driven by every person in it. Like, we're not passively watching it. Every person in the show is asking questions and in chat or in the panel, and it's a very different participatory platform that I haven't seen anywhere else. And I think that it is it's unique, and I don't know how easy it is to reproduce. I don't know whether anybody could do this. And I think it's a mixture of things that might be hard to link, but I'm trying to figure out that. It's like, how do you make it modular, and how do you build training, and how you this is how you do this for your organization. But it's a mixture of technical. The fact that we're all talking about media makes it easier for us to get better at looking and good and sounding good, because it's part of what we're talking about. When you're not doing that, it could be more difficult. Jeffrey, then Bill, then Jesse.
So I think of it as the happy little trees effect. You could both be staring at a painting, and somebody see just a world full of color, and the other person just see a couple sticks or something like that. And I think it's really lies on the person that you end up training, if they want to apply that stuff, if they're passionate about that, or if they're not passionate about it. They just might gloss over everything that you say until they find the right person that drives it into their skull. Yeah, you need good sound. Yeah, you need good video. And this is how you do it.
Go ahead, Bill.
There's this thing about just being really present when you're doing any kind of presentation for anybody. I used to run into it a lot. I worked for Video Maker Magazine on the road doing demos for about 10 years. And when you get off, quote, stage, even if you're just managing other people, you're exhausted. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to be 100% focused on anything. So it's not a trivial thing that Alex is doing here to keep these things balanced mentally and herd us cats. That's
and I will say that I'm very ADD, and but what it's allowed me to do is build a lot of muscles of. I'm naturally ADD. Left to my own devices, my brain will just go in 100 different directions all at the same time, and that allows me to come up with novel solutions to things, because I'm intermingling a whole bunch of ideas that you wouldn't normally intermingle together. So I allow myself to do that at times, but during most of my day, I'm extremely structured because of my tendencies to be ADD. I'm extremely structured. I don't have a lot of notifications. I won't pick up phone calls of people I don't know. I won't, I don't, if I'm in a meeting, I will not look at my text or email, like ever. Like I don't look down in a meeting. I have somebody else take notes. I just am present with the client or whoever we're talking to. So I think that it's helped me a lot to have to build a methodology to be present because I'm not naturally that way. And so I think that beyond Zoom, it's super useful to get good at being present. It does drive me a little crazy if people look down. If I even hear people typing on the other side of a call, I'll usually close it. Like not in a mean way. I'll just go, hey, I gotta go. Bye-bye. Jesse, go ahead. And then Jason, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, whenever I produce a Zoom event, I think of it sort of like a real live event in the sense that, we're developing a show flow and all that sort of stuff. So when people arrive, they're sort of arriving to a graphic or a slide or something like that, and there's kind of a sequence of events. And just wanted to say in that, it's not just one person that's the host and also spotlighting people or muting and unmuting. There's also a team of people, behind the scenes that are doing all these functions in Zoom,
right.
Which, occurs here, which is kind of the core, I think, of why it works well. Yep.
It definitely is a team effort. When we're doing Zooms, there's a bunch of us that are doing a bunch of things that make them work. Not just one person trying to. I'm going to put together a Zoom, and we're all going to do it together. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm highly ADD, and you can see it as something that's wrong with you, or you can realize that it can make you a more compelling host if you can get certain things very specifically in line. And those routines are hard won, but they are worth it. They're worth their weight in gold.
Almost every host I know is ADD. All right, next question.
Next question, Dale from Oakland says, are there any major differences in the various Zoom plans besides the number of viewers?
Yeah, the big thing is between the webinar and the meeting. Well, there's a bunch of different distinctions. One is the webinar, which is going to let you do Q&A. It's also going to keep people as attendees versus panelists. So those are the big things with the webinar, in my opinion. Then you have meetings, and meetings don't have Q&A, which hopefully someday we'll have. But what meetings allow you to do is break into breakout rooms, up to 200, I think, people in it. You can break into a breakout room, and so you can now break everybody out and say, I'll talk amongst themselves, and then come back together. And it is odd that Q&A doesn't exist in meetings and breakout rooms don't exist in webinars, but they're two different apparently they're a fork in the road somewhere that caused two different beans to come out. Then you have the business plan is distinct because you can get higher resolution if you're doing point-to-point. Rooms are completely different. Like for instance, this for the panelists at least is 720p, and our stream to YouTube, because Guy joins with a room every morning or most mornings, and that forces everybody's video to support the room. So it's a paid room. So those are some of the different distinctions there that do happen within Zoom. And you have to kind of choose what you need for each piece. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was just going to say also your role. Because I was a little bit the host yesterday, I had a terrible time, and I have been here 125, 130 times, but I did not know where the menus, the controls were, and it was one of the most frustrating experiences. So you just have to go through that. If you're going to host, you have to host. Don't
make your big event the first time you do it. That is
Totally.
Really, you really have to. The reason there were a bunch of reasons that I started this, but one of the reasons that I started it was I have a lot of experience in online stuff with Hangouts. When we started this in March, I had some experience with Zoom, I'd played with it a little bit, and I had started jumping in, and I'd heard about it. And so a lot of this was like, I'm about to do a whole bunch of Zooms for clients, and I better be doing this every day to, dog food it. And so that was one of the many factors and that I missed the Pixel Core, which is what I had before. And I know where I'm going to be for the next couple months at least. And so there was a whole bunch of factors that were the right time and the right place for me to jump into this. But I obviously know it pretty well now because of this and because of all the other things that we've been doing in Zoom for clients. Next question.
Sorry, Bill McIntosh says, our district subscribed to Zoom, but only certain accounts have webinars, so we use meetings. Often we record while using share screen. Is there a setting to keep participants or the presenter's webcam from covering the screencast, especially in the recording?
Sorry, welcome to our hell. So the fact that every time you turn on a screen share, it takes over everybody's screen, I'm sure what seemed like a good idea, but we all hate it. So the way to do that is the easiest way to do that is to is to have some kind of virtual camera. We talked about virtual cameras earlier, is to have a virtual camera go into Zoom. Now Zoom, I'm sure that at some point is going to turn that off or give us the ability to treat screencasts the same way as everything else. But right in the current state, the only way to keep it from taking over is to have some kind of virtual camera that you're going to pass it through. You can do things like, again, like is one option. Unfortunately, will only put the person over top of it. I can't find a way to just switch back and forth, which is all I need. Being able to jump between slides and switch back and forth between the host. I don't need the little the pip thing. I've been playing with them over the weekend, and that's my only thing about that. But you can use OBS, and then you can have OBS go out to NDI camera, and then NDI camera go in. It's a simple setup. I know that sounds complicated for a lot of folks, but that's not a very complicated thing to do. And now you have a little switcher, and then you're switching it in instead of you can go back and forth between your slides. The challenge there is just remember that Zoom will treat your video. Zoom treats video, it prioritizes frame rate. And when you're doing screen captures, it prioritizes resolution. So if you cut it in, it will be a lower resolution going in. And that may not be what you want if you have slides. But my personal opinion is if you can't read the slides because it's a lower resolution in Zoom, then the text is too small. Like you need to find, you put too much on it. There's too muchness on your slide. You need to break it up into a couple different slides, make the text bigger. You should be able to do it that way. So anyway, any other questions about that? Any comment? Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, and if you have another device, an iOS device or something like that, you can sign it up into Zoom on the exact same account. And if you can play back from there, then it will not take over as a screen share.
Oh, that's great. That's good. Next question.
Prema says, please demonstrate the difference between pin and spotlight.
Well, pin is a, go ahead, Mike. I don't know if you'll, so go ahead. It won't make any difference.
Yeah.
It won't make any difference. You're the only person that makes a difference for everyone, right?
Yeah. And we just got a message that the YouTube people are seeing the gallery view, and I don't know why that is because attendees aren't. But anyway, pin determines what you see. That means you can pick a window, pick a screen on the gallery view, you pin it, and that's what you see locked into your screen. And spotlight means that you're controlling what everybody else sees when you're the host. So it's the difference is we have enabled the people see the host view, and when the host spotlights something, that's what you see in the host view. So like right now, I'm monitoring what the attendees see. You're seeing me because we're in speaker. Follow the speaker, and if I spotlight it, you'll see what I'm pointing. I'm saying I want you to watch somebody like when Guy is showing.
Go ahead and spotlight it. Go ahead and spotlight.
Okay.
Are you spotlighting me right now?
I'm spotlighting the VLM meter. How's that? So so that goes out to attendees. Now look on YouTube. I don't know, Alex, look on YouTube and see, are you still seeing a gallery view? I don't know.
I'm still seeing the gallery view, and I'm not sure exactly why.
Yeah, I don't know what the, I mean, I can change it to follow
Mike,
host.
are you using a dual screen setup? Mike?
Yes.
That may be it. Because
Yeah,
it's pulling your first screen, not the second screen where the highlight is being done.
What if I
where the
close?
pin
You
is
got to
being done.
highlight the second screen.
Yeah.
How do I highlight?
Interesting.
Choose what screen is being highlighted? I can close.
drove
So
me
if you
Yesterday
click
was
on
I
the
could
viewer,
not find what was the equivalent of the program. I had no view of what the audience was seeing, and that was vastly frustrating.
Yeah, there's what's missing in Zoom in this case, and yeah, it is interesting because the YouTube, for whatever reason, YouTube and the attendee view is not lining up right now, and so there's something.
Disable dual screen view, and that should do it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay, so this is something we're all learning together. So dual screen for the person doing the edit, the host doing the edit is maybe a bad idea. And so which we learned something. This is why we do this all the time. And by handing these off, we're exposing things, because Mickey has gotten really good at it, but Mickey has his own little setup. And unfortunately, he's not here today to talk through that. But I think that is, again, these are the things, like one of the things that's missing in Zoom is the edit tool. What you need to do is have a role that is an editor. And that editor has a view that shows what's going out to everyone, and they're able to click through things, and preferably they'd be able to sticky click, which means they just click on the screen of what they want to show rather than the stupid drop down thing.
That would be glorious.
It'd be amazing. Like, like that would like fix all the things. Maybe not all the things, but so many. Now we're getting a full screen of me. So
okay. Well, it must be that Mickey, with all of his monitors, he's got a computer behind every monitor or something instead of 2 screens. So
yeah, we'll have to ask.
I believe Mickey edits on a second machine. That's how he's doing it.
Yeah, he's running 2 or 3 machines.
Yep. Anyway, so the generally, if you're a host or if you're a panelist, and when you hit spotlight, it'll hit everybody. It'll hit all the panelists. It'll hit the attendees, etc. And it's really kind of, if we're doing it and someone's editing that's not you, it can be as an edit, like what we do here or what we try to do here. It's annoying because it keeps on taking away our grid all the time. Pin is only for you, and again, I think it generally works for edits, but wasn't working until now. Anyway, that's the difference. Next question.
Okay.
You're gonna say something, Guy?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the nice things if you're a co-host or if you assign their co-hosts and the person cutting the show gets a little wrapped up in something, is that a co-host could come in and save the day and actually spotlight as well, and then they can unspotlight when the TD takes back over. So that's a good thing to know.
Yep. Next question.
Roger Harmon from Tucson says, on a Mac, when trying to share screen playing a YouTube video, the audio is not coming through. What are the correct audio settings in Zoom and on the Mac?
So I believe that computer audio is what you want, and that's in the share screen. Oh, I can't, I'm not a co-host right now. So Mike, if you can make me a co-host, that'd be great. But if you go into share screen, you should be able to set computer audio in the advanced setting. Let me see if I can do that here. So if you go into advanced,
should just be a little box on the left, a little check box.
Oh, share computer sound. Sorry, you're right. So in the lower left, there's share computer sound. And so what that's going to let you do is actually, it'll take whatever audio is passing through and share it with the playout. Roscoe and then Jason.
No, that was exactly it. It's not on the advanced screen. It's on the basic screen. It's in the lower left.
Yep. Go ahead, Jason.
And if you're even a little bit uncertain, get audio hijack and loop back, and it will be beautiful.
Right. I will say that I have gone from first I went, I don't even know what audio hijack is, and loop back to I don't like it, and this is frustrating, to I use it every day. So it's like, just buy the bundle. You use them for different things. I bought the whole bundle. I bought a loop back, and then I bought audio hijack for another computer, and then the next purchase I just bought the whole bundle, like everything they make, because I was just like, oh, this is too much trouble to figure this out. And so loopback lets you grab other audio or multiple sources of audio, mix them down, and send them as a source to any app that you have. What you're listening to, if you're in Mukana and you turn on the audio, that's audio hijack. So I'm taking the audio from Zoom, passing it into a streaming node, and then sending it out. So they're useful for that kind of routing. But to do what the question was, it's just the lower left corner. There's a little radio box. Turn that on, and you should be able to hear it. Next question.
Everybody, just give me a minute. I'm going to try something and see if I can change what screen you're seeing on YouTube. So I'll stand by, but go ahead and continue.
There's a lot of delay there. So yeah, we'll just do the best you can. All right, next question.
Alton Christensen says, is it possible for an attendee to share their screen, iOS screen specifically, in a way that does not take over all the other screens for other attendees and panelists? I'm keen on switch to spotlight, whatever as needed, as opposed to exiting screen share to have control back.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing.
Same thing. It's annoying.
Absolutely not. Yep. Absolutely not.
Again, back to virtual cameras. It's a common question. It's a common complaint. Someday we'll get something else. All right, next question.
Next question is Alan Scott, and Alan says, verifying we have good audio on Zoom is not trivial. Verifying that we have good audio on Zoom is not trivial. Is there an equivalent of the Skype test call to get true network transited audio back? If not, is there any resource besides office hour panel checks?
Yeah, I don't think Zoom has a way to just do. I mean, I will say that the Skype audio check would be something great for Zoom to add, which is, you know, that what the Skype audio check is is you click on this little thing to test, and it goes, "Hello, welcome to the Skype call testing service. Please," you know, and this nice woman asks you to say something, and you say something, and it plays it right back to you. It records it and plays back that segment back to you, about a 10-second segment, and I do it every time I get on a Skype call, just to make sure that it's like a system test. I just turn it on, I go, and I do it, and I hear it back, and I go, okay, I sound the way I'm supposed to sound. And I don't know of anything like that for Zoom.
Roger just posted a link in the chat. There's a zoom.us/test, and it creates a new meeting, I guess, new Zoom session.
And then the other thing that I do is if I don't have Skype on a machine, I'll open up QuickTime on the Mac and just do a record to make sure that my system is working. QuickTime has, you know, make sound recording or make movie recording, and I use that all the time for all kinds of little quick checks. Greg, and then Jeffrey, and then Jeff.
Well, in the Zoom preferences, there's a speaker and a mic check and a video check.
Okay.
So you can test them all before you go.
I don't think
but that doesn't go
checks
through
it
the
over
network.
the network though. I think it just checks it locally.
You're right. You're
Yeah, it's
right.
local.
Yep.
Here's the problem with that is when you do it before the call, it doesn't do it in the high definition. At least it hasn't. I haven't done it in a while. They might have changed it, but it didn't do it in a high definition. You'd always get a really lo-fi type audio back, so you couldn't really hear how you sounded. So what I would do is I actually set up another computer, and sometimes if I really needed to make sure my audio was perfect, I would set up a Mac computer and I would set up a PC, and I'd start a Zoom session, and I'd simply just talk into the microphone, listen on the other computer, because it would also tell me the time frame that my voice would get from one to the other. Even though they're right next to each other, it still goes through that whole loop, and then how long it would take and how it would sound on both a Mac and a PC.
Jeff, and then Roscoe.
So I use the QuickTime record just to check, at least locally, that I'm working. And I also use, if you need a free LUFS meter, sort of equivalent to the WLM is a ULEAN, and I'll put a link for the chat.
That's right.
It's cross.
Absolutely. Roscoe, and then Greg.
Yeah, I do the same thing that Jeffrey's doing. I actually start another Zoom computer elsewhere, talk to it. I actually record that meeting, then send it back to me by Dropbox and listen to it and see how it goes.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The other check is to just do a Zoom meeting and record it and play it back.
Like, for instance, I was testing stuff with my wife, who does a bunch of meetings, and so we were testing new mics and other things for her, and we did exactly that. We jumped over here. Now, what I did is I took the Zoom and I used loopback to send it to a device which goes into QuickTime, and then recorded it in QuickTime so that we could look at the file really quickly, but which was to me as fast as recording the Zoom, just because I was able to get that output. You were going to say something, Jesse? Or maybe it was just goodbye. All right, next question.
Brian Anderson says, does it make a difference to get a 1080 image into Zoom, or is a 720 image good enough once all is said and done? 1080 is more difficult with my particular setup.
Generally, 720 is going to be just fine for Zoom. There is some cases where Zoom is able to go to 1080. So, building a pipeline into the future that is capable of 1080 is probably a useful thing. But currently, 720 will represent the highest resolution that's going into Zoom for the next little bit of time, is my guess. Guy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, Brian, if you want to jump on a meeting after this, or anybody wants to see 1080p, I can create a 1080p after this, and it's like looking into another world. It's so clear.
It snaps every once in a while. We see it snap every once in a while into 1080, and you're like, "What just happened?" And then it goes back to wherever it was before.
Yeah. So Brian, if you give it a shot, we can meet after. And anybody else who wants to see.
Well,
1080p.
I'm asking specifically about my camera. I can get a 1080 out of my camera to my machine with some level of difficulty and pain. I can get 720 easier. So is that worth the effort?
For today, absolutely. I would, in the long term, figure out how to get 1080p working, because I think it'll be more and more available, as we move forward. So next question.
What are some of the settings? This is Christian Ortiz. What are some of the settings that you recommend for default for sound? You say to enable original sound, disable automatic volume adjust, or a disabling of some of the advanced audio processing settings. What are others?
So I don't do that I used to. I have stopped turning off all the Zoom settings for average participants. So I go to original audio when we bring in musicians or something that I'm trying to pick up, but I actually leave most of the Zoom tools as they are for average participants, because they have all kinds of sound going on. They don't necessarily have a good mic. They don't know what they're doing. so I have found it better to leave those tools the way they are. After a lot of A/B tests, we decided that if you have a really good system in front of it, then you want to use original audio. If you have music, you either want to use original audio, or you want to go into your screen share, go into the advanced settings and pass the audio through music or computer sound only, which will be dramatically better than original audio. As far as passing that audio in, it's a little complicated. You definitely need loopback for that. But I think that for an average person who's going to be talking, who's going in, I don't change any of their settings for that anymore, because if they don't have quality hardware in front of it, you're actually reducing the quality of their interface. All that noise reduction and everything else is good, because they've got a bunch of hiss, or they've got a bunch of background noise, and they've got all these other things that you introduce by turning off. And I made that mistake for a while of having people turn all that stuff off, because we were working with musicians trying to get the most out of it. And now the biggest way we work with musicians to get the most out of it is get them to get loopback and pass it into the computer audio, and send the audio that way is the way to do it. Next question.
James Baker from Savannah says, are there any suggestions on how to record multiple display screens in my studio that I use simultaneously during class so I can share them with asynchronous students afterwards?
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, NDI Monitor is a free tool from NewTek. You can put it on any machine you want and record any screen you want on your network.
Go ahead, Jason.
He wants to record multiple screens simultaneously.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
Jason?
Let's see. The ATEM Mini ISO, but that's going to be too much money. But I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up.
Right. I mean, a switcher, one way to do that as a switcher, is to split your videos that are going to all those, and then run them into a switcher, and then you can switch to them when you're talking to folks, or you can record them all. You can do ISO records against those. Not necessarily the least expensive solution, but definitely what Doug talked about. If your NDI is a way to make that work, it's probably, depending on your computer and your network, it may not be as stable as something that's more hardware driven. So you just want to look at whether you absolutely need it, or whether you need it most of the time. Bill, and then Chris.
I'm just wondering, the start of this is what's feeding those display screens, because that's going to be the source of the video. So if it's coming out of something, I mean, are you looking at camcorders? Are you looking at something off the internet? So where it originates, I think, has to play into this.
It does, but if you split that audio, I mean, if you can loop the HDMI and turn it into SDI, that's how we do it to make that work. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, this is a class, so this is training. So presumably you're trying to show it. To me, I'm reading this question as I'm instructing somebody, I'm teaching somebody, I'm doing a tutorial or training. And I think that for many years, trainers have modified their day-to-day workflow, because you have to remember, if I'm watching this training online, I'm probably watching it in a single 16:9. So optimize your display for the person watching, not for the way you normally spread out and work, is what.
And a
I
lot of
would
times
say.
we use it, if we've got a bunch of inputs, we start using super sources a lot with macros. And so I'm talking about something. So for instance, if I want to talk to you about how I do a green screen, it would be really useful if you see on one screen my Blackmagic software, and on the other screen the output, the program output from the switcher. So that's a place where having multiple access to screens as you're working. And then you might want to have 4 of them because you might want to show 2 or 3 inputs and how it's being cut together. And you don't necessarily want to show your real multi-view. So there's a bunch of reasons to have those multiple pieces, but know that that you don't want to use them all the time because people are kind of just scattering around. But giving people a random access so they can kind of watch something can be useful. It's really useful to see what the raw pieces are, and then people might end up watching it over and over again to see how different things work. And it is a little easier to set up if you do a multi-view with 4 or 6 or whatever, where they can see all those things at one time. Rather than you trying to figure out what you're going to show them, you can show them all of it and let them play it over and over again to figure out what happened. Go ahead, Brian.
Something I've done before for this is actually used a recorder, an Atmos recorder, as the second screen, and actually passing through to a bigger one if I needed it and recording it on there. And that's the only option I had, but it worked really well. And then I could do the edit later of screen 1 and screen 2.
All right, now
it worked pretty well.
Now we're going to go ahead, Courtney, real quick, and then we're going to shift to speed mode.
Just once again, a suggestion for hardware solution is these low-cost HDMI pass-through H.264 recorders. They record onto a USB thumb drive, and they record in a format which will upload to YouTube without transcoding. And so it's a handy way to capture any of the streams that are directly going to a monitor, and it's, works with any platform, works with any.
And how much is that?
Well, these were about $49. Now they're about because of the situation.
Because COVID.
They're hard to find, and this is a no-name one because it eliminates HDCP, and that can be an issue when you're trying to intercept an HDMI signal and record it. So they're now about $110. You can find the same one, and Hopog, Rocket, there's some legitimate ones that are about $100 to $150, but you can find them as cheap as $50 to $70.
That's great.
And they do it's about a 50 megabit, H.264 stream, so it's not too big a file.
That's great. All right, now we're going to move. If we come to you, it'll probably be 1 or 2 people, and we'll move through it pretty quickly. Go ahead. Next question.
So first of all, Jamie, I want to apologize. I think it called you James. Premise says, I just purchased Audio Hijack plus Loopback and WLM. Yay, I get a commission. Is there a source where I can learn how to set up like office hours for mic checks? Yeah, I think Mickey didn't make a video yet.
Oh, let's get to Mickey. But you should be able to add WLM to Audio Hijack is what you're going to do. You're going to have Audio Hijack. You're going to have WLM. You'll grab the audio there, and then you just need to capture that screen and put it into something like OBS and cut it out. I mean, that's how people are doing it. Go ahead, Chris.
I will say that last week on the Audio Hijack hour that we did, I roughed in, I don't have WLM, but I used another meter, and I showed how to do that in that.
Perfect. Yeah, go back to look at that last Tuesday. All right, next question.
Next question. Roger says, Alex, can you explain how you move remote guests between Zoom rooms, waiting rooms, green room, stage in the productions you work on?
I don't do it that often because I don't do a lot of meetings. Usually when clients want to do meetings, I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. like unless you really want to go into breakout rooms. And I just don't, I try to push people away from those because I don't like breakout rooms. And so I do know that there is, we probably can get, I don't know if we have any experts here on the meetings of moving people around. So we might have to table that question. Go ahead, George.
So real quick, I know last week we talked about it a little bit. So that was one of the issues on my last meeting, is that we were rolling everyone in and out of meeting rooms, and it really got folks aggravated because you can actually see this roll happening. So I agree with you. Webinars is probably the best.
Auto like breaking people out randomly to each other is actually a pretty easy thing to do. It's I want to put certain people into certain ones becomes something that I find to be difficult. Like the meeting, just hitting it and going, and you can move people. There's a little tool that the host can do to do that. I can't do it here because we're in a different platform, but I find that you end up with a lot of unexpected occurrences inside of that. Brian, real quick, and then we're going to move on. We're a little behind.
Yeah, it was. I forget the guy's name. He's here regularly from Australia. He was doing something where he was kind of Grant. He was flipping it, where he was actually using a waiting room as a green room and then bringing those people into the main meeting. I thought it was a really creative way to think about it.
I think it depends on how many people you have in the meeting room of how workable the solution is. And so, yeah, we'll keep on talking to that one. But
the
it's a
thing
little
with
tricky.
the breakout rooms is the business rules are really weird and arbitrary. I mean, you should be able to just spin one up and spin it down, not independent of all the other ones.
Discord rocks this, by the way. You have a couple different calls in Discord. You just drag someone to the other one, and then there they are.
There are a great many podcasts that use Discord as an audio guest entry system, and where they can put them in a green room and then move them onto the live stream and move them back and so on. It works great.
If the video wasn't so weird, it would be great. Anyway, next question.
Yeah, we have like 20 questions in 5 minutes.
So, by the way, I just want to point out to our audience, what happened was here is how we got behind is that there weren't a lot of questions at the beginning. So when we talk about it, you got to get these questions in early and then vote them up, because what happens is we get into a slow pace because there's not that many questions, and then we get behind. So it's really important to front stack questions in these hours, because when we see a bunch of questions, we also move at a different pace at the beginning. Next question.
20 questions, 4.5 minutes. What is the hardware USB dongle that you use to trick Zoom into thinking you have a second monitor?
It's
OWC, look for HDMI security bypass.
I'll put the link in. I just got hooked it up.
Okay, great. Next question.
Premise says, how can a yoga class set up audio in order to alternate between being voice only instruction and music only? I would use a mixer.
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, that's a great thing for audio hijack and loop and loop back.
Yep, and yeah, something like a wireless mic going into the Mac, and that's the input, and then the using those to go back and forth between your local music would work well. And you could probably mix the two of them together, so you could decide how much of each one. Go ahead, Roscoe.
And just so you know, there's some really good videos a yoga instructor does exactly with the best audio hijack and loopback instructional videos I've seen are from a yoga instructor.
That's
on
awesome.
the internet.
Okay, check that out. All right, next question.
Philip from Brisbane, Australia says, yesterday, to fix George's audio issue, he ended up unticking an option to use stereo sound. I tried to take a look and see where that was done, but couldn't find it. Is it a Zoom feature? If so, is it only for paid accounts? Was it his audio interface, or was it an OS option? I think it's in Zoom.
Where was that, Greg? I don't know where the
I couldn't
stereo
find it
option
either.
was.
Yeah, I couldn't find it under audio settings on my copy. It's not there.
What are we looking for, sir?
Where did you
audio
turn stereo
settings.
off?
It's in advanced and audio settings. Audio settings advanced.
Okay.
Use stereo audio.
All right. Next question.
You have to enable it on the web account
Which
to get the checkbox in your Zoom.
Right. And what's interesting is I've enabled it, but I still don't see it as an option for me. Interesting.
Are you updated, Alex? Most
I believe
recent
I am. I think so.
download?
Anyway, next question.
Okay, back to Jamie Baker. Does anyone use live trivia or other games with students on Zoom? If so, and they involve audio and video, do you share screen and play it live for them, or give them access to a screen locally? Live Zoom audio and video is not great.
I don't think any of us do that right now. That might be a better one. If you're available, come back and ask in the education one on Friday, because we have a lot more educators that may be doing that. Next question.
Peter says, good question. IT worker, web meeting newbie. What do you mean when you are calling for someone to cut today's meeting, and what do you use for this? So switching the talk.
Yep. So what we're doing is when someone's cutting the show, they're literally editing the show. So Mike is editing the show today, and that is what we do is we make him host, and then as host, his setting is set to participants follow host view, and then he is either going to speaker view or grid view or spotlighting things, and that is hopefully affecting yours. We found a little glitch here, which is that if you have a dual screen, it doesn't work the way we expect it to, but in single screen, it will affect YouTube and participant the same way. But that's what we mean by cutting. Next question.
Stuart Fairweather from Melbourne says, has the latest Zoom update improved the audio quality when audio is coming in from an NDI source?
Go ahead, Jason.
No. Next question.
All right, next question.
Ken Jones from Seattle says, in a meeting account, where do I load my list of recipients? Is this possible, or must I make a group in my mail app and send the message that way?
You can't, I don't think that there's a way to manually send an email out to everyone. I think you have to be inside of the group so that, well, in webinar, actually meetings, I don't know. Webinar, it's a little different. So it's a little more limited in meetings. I actually don't know the answer to that. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to do it in meetings. We always just have to send out a group email and have everyone link in. But in webinar, it does give you reminders.
Yep. Next question.
Stuart wants to know if we can ask Zoom through our panelist network of contacts to include a default to original sound option.
Again, I don't know.
That should
I don't
be
know if
posted on a bathroom somewhere, John.
It is, but I will say that as I've moved forward, I'm not sure if it's a good idea. For people who are talking, unless they have high quality audio and they're trying to get the highest quality audio through the system, I'm not sure that turning original audio on is a good idea anymore, because it's what we've noticed is that we get a lot more room noise and we get a lot more other things that were there. That, unless you have the tools to make that work, I don't know if it's a good idea to turn it on all the time. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of the issues with the high-end gear is along with the nicer sound of it, it's also much more sensitive to all the stuff around it. So there is a considerable difference between original sound being on and off. But as you say,
with great power comes great responsibility.
Great room.
Yeah,
exactly. Unless you have a really, really good room, like now my fan is on. I'm dying in here. It's hot. So, you have to have it.
Yeah. I have a Neumann mic that I like a lot, but I can't use it in this room. I still have a headset,
Right.
because it'll pick up.
That's what I've been running into with the shotguns too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next question.
Courtney says, I would like to cast the Zoom full screen window to my Chromecast compatible 65-inch TV. Other than running Zoom in a Chrome browser window, is there a way to do this?
Go ahead, Mike.
I did it from your first few days, but I ran, if you run on a Chromebook or on an Android device, you have a cast screen option. So you can set that up to your, you can Chromecast that out. And the other option is to run it in Chrome and cast that, other than using Apple TV on iOS devices or whatever else. But it works good. From an Android base, you can cast the entire screen.
Yep. Next question. You have to keep moving. He's going to be really
James
fast.
Babbitt says, what can a Zoom host do to minimize Zoom fatigue?
Good audio. Good audio. I strongly believe that 90% of Zoom fatigue is bad audio. In maybe some bad video, and undisciplined chats, but I would say 90% is audio, 5% is video, 5% is people just being undisciplined. But it's audio, and $30 you get a little pile with a converter and send it to everybody. I would at minimum require everybody to have that, because it's just so much easier to look good. To sound good, and that takes, I think, we're sitting here 3 hours a day without it. I don't feel fatigued, but it's because we have a lot of good audio. All right, next question.
Alton Christensen says, I've been waiting for the iOS update that should allow landscape use of iOS devices in Zoom. Does anyone have that update yet, and does it work?
I don't know. We'll have to test it. Go ahead, Greg.
Works on my iPhone.
I'm not sure what the question.
I'm wondering if it's because I think it's the iPhone. For a long time, Zoom was grabbing the whole sensor rather than cropping it so that it would fill the screen on the return. And I don't know whether that works yet or not. It's hopefully they'll update it. Next question.
Premise says, can Zoom be used for a virtual conference with concurrent sessions? Please explain.
Yeah, you can't. You need to have multiple accounts that will do that. That's the easiest way to do that, is you just can't do it off the same account. The same person. So you can have an account. You can have 5 different people or 5 different entities, we'll call it, and each one of those can run one Zoom at a time. I don't know of any other way to do that. Any other Okay, next question. You just have to have multiple accounts, and those multiple accounts can each run their own Zoom. You have to set them up for that, but go ahead, John.
ASU last month did a thing called Learning Human, or actually a play on Learning Man. I put the link in the chat, and they did a very good set of virtual conferences with multiple breakout rooms, so you could sort of see how they did it. But you're right. They had multiple rooms, and then people switched and moved between them.
Yep. Next question.
Ken Jones says, given a meeting of enthusiastic adults or kids, what's the way to get smoothly combined audio with few audio chops? Is this mixing together versus first one wins, all others mute a function of original sound?
I mean, what you have to do, a lot of it's applying discipline. I mean, the reason ours works is because most people raise their hand and most people don't talk over each other. And it's a wetware problem more than a software problem. I mean, obviously, if you don't have the software or hardware to do it, you need to really rely on the wetware, which is that people act appropriately. Jeff and then Colin.
Yeah, it's purely etiquette. People come into a meeting with their mic muted and they raise their hand and wait to be called on.
Yep. And again, this is another argument why you do many of these. And when you do many of these end over end with the same group and you apply that discipline to it, it doesn't start that way, but it often ends that way. Go ahead, Colin.
Oh, you can sort of enforce this in the beginning by muting everyone other than the host after every response, just to train people. I mean, honestly, I think adults would find that really irritating, but it might work.
Yeah, and the other thing is as a host, you just want to think about throwing the ball really hard and directly. So you'll notice that I'm calling to people. I'm not just going, what do we think? What do we think is an invitation for chaos? So having people raise their hand, knowing where you're going to go, and throwing the ball to them helps a lot. All right, next question. In all hosting, by the way, not just for Zoom. next question.
Roger Harmon says, on a Mac, when trying to share screen playing a YouTube video, the audio is not coming through.
Oh, we got that. I think that might have come in twice.
I don't know why that didn't get marked as done. Prema says, when you refer to editor, is that the same as co-host?
Nope. Co-host has a limited set of functions, and a host has the full set of functions. And what you're watching is what the host view is, and we call them an editor internally, but it's just host. Next question.
What are some the point that Alex is trying to make here is you must make the person you've designated the editor the host within your meeting.
Which is cray-cray.
Yes,
Anyway,
absolutely.
it's like the fact that you just can't assign a co-host an editor role is nuts. Anyway, next question.
John says, what are some talking points to convince or encourage an organization to use Zoom rather than WebEx?
Have them use both of them right after each other. I mean, that's the easiest one, is because one works pretty well and the other one is a dumpster fire. And I don't think I have to establish which one is which because we're not using the other one. Jason.
Show them office hours and say, can you do this? No matter how much practice you have, there you go.
Yeah, try to do this in WebEx. It's just so goofy. And WebEx doesn't, so its support for virtual cameras is almost non-existent. Its layout of people is frustrating. The only thing worse than WebEx is Chime. Anyway, next question.
Courtney says, has anyone suggested a feature update to Zoom to add a local audio meter that could be popped up and be persistent and show both send and receive levels?
John Edelson.
Yes. But in addition to my yes, people can go into the settings and look at the audio gives you send and receive. But yes,
it would be
question.
It would be great if it was more precise. Maybe very accurate.
It's not calibrated and it's not persistent. That's
yeah. So not precise or accurate, which is the worst of all worlds.
It has been suggested.
Next question.
And finally, can we all sing or say happy birthday to Mikey, the Sausage King? No, we're not going to do that. No, but happy birthday, Mikey.
Happy birthday, Mikey. Thank you. We are running 8 minutes heavy, but we did get through all the questions. Our mission here has been has succeeded, though slightly off time. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody for being here. The show gets done with all of us. So the attendees had a couple slow moments here, a couple slow beginnings of the hour. I just want to just recommend that you front load the hour rather than back load the hour. And then vote the questions up, because if we didn't get the questions and didn't spend a lot of time on them, it's because they were at the end with one vote. So when you look at it, if you want those questions, if you think those are important, vote them up. Make sure that we know that those are important to ask. Go ahead, Jason, and then Bill, real quick.
Might I suggest that speed round can basically sort questions such that the answers are only yes or no?
No, yeah, exactly. We'll try to figure that out. We'll have to have a bigger staff on the back end. Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Guy, who yesterday, when I was hosting for a short period of time, was the only thing between me and absolutely brain meltdown. Thank you, Guy, for the back channel. You might try this, because that's not working.
Very good.
You're welcome. Yeah, I just happened to have the iPad looking at attendee view, which is handy to have, and I knew that you did have it. I was like, hey, what they're seeing is this. So cool.
And by the way, John, another little bug before we leave is that Zoom is no longer closing the YouTube, YouTube live streams correctly. So I thought that I've done everything that I can possibly think of to close this live stream, and I still have to go to YouTube and close it manually, or it'll run for 4 hours. So just as a note, if you were curious about that.
Curious, it's Roger.
Yeah.
And while
anyway,
while we're going through things like that, previous versions of Zoom had a sticky setting for original audio, and now it's no longer sticky. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but it's
I would say, given my current opinion, I would say it's a good thing.
Possibly.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Thank you again to everyone. This is a show that is all done by us as a group. It's the only show I know that is this participatory, where literally we as a group generate the show together. And so I really appreciate all the time that everyone puts into being here and hanging out. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Let's all
Take care,
all
guys.
fake the credits. Ah!
Yeah,
Long live the Sausage King.